CreaVolution, Ending the Conflict Between Creation and Evolution. Preface/TLDR, The Unification of CreaVolution. The struggle between evolutionists and creationists is the greatest intellectual obstruction of our time. For 150 years, both camps have been trapped in a false choice, the assumption that accepting one means the destruction of the other. This document ends that struggle. CreaVolution demonstrates that we are looking at the same reality from different sides. Religion defines the source code, the intention, while science describes the algorithm, the process. One explains the why, the other the how. The fault lines repaired. Polarization is not biological or theological, but politically driven to keep us divided. When we remove the noise, a crystal clear synergy emerges. Time is relative. The biblical days are the geological eons, or epochs. The language of the spirit meets the language of the clock. The wolf in the living room. Everyone accepts the transformation from wolf to chihuahua. This is macroevolution in slow motion. There is no invisible boundary, there is only time. Self-steering software. DNA is an intelligent, iterative program. Evolution is not the result of blind chance, but the ingenious working method of the Creator. Cosmic citizenship. Angels and extraterrestrials are one and the same. H.E.A.R.T.S, helpers from extraterrestrial advanced realms that support. They are the evidence of successful, moral evolution elsewhere in the cosmos. An invitation to awaken. This unification is not an optional theory, but a bitter necessity. The approaching disclosure of UAPs and non-human intelligence forces us to leave the intellectual trenches. The powers that be fuel our quarrels about the past to keep us blind to the reality of the present. My personal observation of, among other things, the expanded electromagnetic spectrum confirms that invisible creation and measurable science are simply different frequencies of the same ocean. I invite you, lay down your rigidity. Stop defending a camp and start observing the truth. We no longer stand against each other. We stand together on the same earth, looking at the same stars, driven by the same source code. CreaVolution is the end of denial. Welcome to reality. 1. The language of time. Eons versus days. The greatest misunderstanding between religion and science begins with the clock. The battle between 6 days and billions of years is essentially a linguistic problem. When we solve this, the need for conflict disappears. The point. The semantic battle over the word day. The deadlock discussion stems from an overly literal interpretation of ancient texts. Many people think religion claims the earth was made in 144 hours. Science, however, proves that the formation of the earth took billions of years. This creates the false image that you must choose between the text or the facts. The unification. Time is stretchable. The solution lies in the fact that the word day in ancient languages does not always mean 24 hours. In the Bible, the word day is regularly used for a long period or an entire era. Groups such as Jehovah's Witnesses have also long recognized that the creative days are not literal days. A day, in this context, is a defined period in which a certain process takes place. The synthesis. Eons and epochs. As soon as we realize that time is relative, the puzzle pieces fall into place. What religion calls a creative day, science calls a geological epoch. They are two different labels for exactly the same vast time intervals. The order in the creation stories, from light to water to land to life, corresponds surprisingly strongly with the scientific timeline. The language of the source code, religion, describes the steps. The language of the algorithm, science, measures the duration. Strongest argument for unification. There is no evidence that the Creator is bound by our human 24-hour clock. Billions of years of evolution are but a moment to a timeless intelligence. Science has simply found the yardstick that determines the length of God's days. 2. The self-steering algorithm. The universal source code. To end polarization, we must move away from the idea that life is a ready-made watch. Reality is more spectacular. The universe is not a static machine, but a self-steering system. The point, beyond the watchmaker, The classic argument that a watch is too complex for chance is correct at its core, but it draws the wrong conclusion. A watch is a dead object assembled from the outside. Life is a dynamic process that grows from the inside out. The creator is not a watchmaker, but an intelligent programmer. He designs the source code and the rules of the game, after which the program unfolds itself. The unification, DNA as a universal language. Whether you look at it from religion or science, the facts about our biology are identical. All life on Earth speaks the same programming language, DNA. The same four chemical letters, A, T, C, and G, write the entire book of life. For the scientist, this proves common ancestry. For the believer, this proves a single universal design system. Both camps thus recognize a deep, fundamental connection between all life forms. The synthesis, complexity from simplicity. The universe works according to simple rules that produce enormous complexity. Think of a snowflake or a crystal. Beautiful structures that arise spontaneously from simple natural laws. We call this self-organization. Life began billions of years ago very simply as single-celled organisms. The algorithm first tested strength and size, as with the dinosaurs, before moving on to high intelligence. Evolution is simply the mechanism by which the source code optimizes itself. The 5-layer model of CreaVolution. To understand how everything comes together, we look at the structure of our reality. The source. The intelligent programmer who is the intention behind the code. The source code. The stable laws of nature, such as gravity, that make everything possible. The cosmic structure. The universe forming into stars and planets. The emergence of life. Matter becoming self-organizing. DNA. Evolution. The process of adaptation and growth toward ever-increasing complexity. Strongest argument for unification. The battle between chance and design is a false choice. If you write a computer program that can improve itself, it demonstrates more intelligence than if you have to place every part manually. Evolution is not the enemy of creation. It is the ultimate proof of a brilliant design. 3. The wolf in the living room. Microevolution as evidence. This chapter deals with the creator's laboratory. Here we see that the struggle between religion and science is often merely a battle over words. Both camps actually recognize the same mechanism, but give it a different name. The point: change is a fact. Microevolution is not a theoretical concept, but a direct observation. We see bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics in a short amount of time. We see how humanity has completely transformed crops like maize through agricultural selection. Even groups such as Jehovah's Witnesses recognize this variation within a kind or species. Therefore, the discussion is not about if species change, but about how far that change can go. The unification, the wolf and the pug. The most striking example of this power is the dog. All dog breeds on Earth are direct descendants of the wolf. Through conscious selection, man has created an enormous variety in just 10,000 years. From the Chihuahua to the Great Dane, the outward differences are gigantic. But the basic DNA code is virtually identical. Man acts here as the guiding factor in an accelerated process of evolution. The synthesis, from micro to macro. The step from small variation, micro, to major change, macro, is a matter of time and isolation. The creationist argues that a dog always remains a dog. The evolutionist argues that these changes add up to new life forms over millions of years. In CreaVolution, this is a gradual process. If man can change a wolf into a pug in 10,000 years, what can nature achieve in 10 million years? Especially when taking into account all weather, climate, and geological changes such as ice ages, forest fires, floods, and earthquakes. Reproductive isolation, where groups can no longer physically reach each other, is the engine that definitively separates new species from one another. Strongest argument for unification. Microevolution is simply the workshop in which we see the algorithm in action. If we accept that a species can change to survive, we accept the tool of the creator. The boundary between micro and macro is not a wall, but a slow transition on the cosmic timeline. Evolution is the method by which the original blueprint adapts to a changing world. Personal note: I, Hans J.C. Bacher, the writer of this piece, was born with multiple expanded perceptual abilities. At times, these have increased the chances of survival for myself or those close to me, while I, like every living being, face unique challenges on my path. 4. The myth of the fish ape: dust, stars, and consciousness. In this chapter, we demolish the biggest blockade to unification, the question of the missing links. The battle over transitional species is based on a mistaken image of how change works. When we correct this, we see that the Bible and biology speak of the same process. The point: the misconception of the failed transitional species. Many people think of evolution as a series of clumsy creatures that are on their way to something better. This is a thinking error. There are no failed transitional species such as a fish ape, ape man, or a whale chicken. Every life form in history was, at that specific moment, the best adapted version for its environment. A fish that began to crawl over land, such as the Tiktaalik, was not a failed fish, but a perfect inhabitant of a shallow swamp. Fossilization is an extremely rare coincidence. Species in a rapid transition phase are fewer in number, making the statistical chance of finding their fossils almost zero. The unification: dust, stars, and chemistry. The religious statement that man was formed from the dust of the ground is not a fable but a chemical fact. Our bodies consist of elements such as carbon, nitrogen, and iron. These elements were literally forged in the hearts of stars and form the basis of the earth. The scientific mud from which the first life emerged is exactly the same material as the biblical dust. The evolution of billions of years is simply the process by which this dust organizes itself into complex biology. The synthesis: Adam and the image. The greatest reconciliation lies in understanding what makes humans unique. The image of God does not refer to our biological form with 2 arms and 2 legs. It refers to our spiritual qualities, consciousness, morality, and free will. Adam symbolizes the moment when biological evolution crossed the threshold of self-awareness. Evolution built the vehicle, the body, and the Creator provided the spark, the consciousness. Strongest argument for unification: the dividing line between micro and macro evolution is artificial. We already see in dogs that reproductive isolation, due to size or behavior, drives species apart. What the creationist calls variation within the kind is in fact macroevolution in slow motion. The Creator does not breed manually, but has designed a self-steering algorithm that responds to the environment. Evolution is the working methodology of an intelligence that brings matter to life. 5. The observer, the expanded spectrum. The gap between the tangible matter of science and the invisible world of religion exists only because of the limitations of our biology. In this chapter, we demonstrate that reality is many times larger than what the average human perceives. The point: the boundary of biology. Human senses are not the benchmark for total reality. We see only a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light. Everything outside the 400 to 700 nanometer range, such as ultraviolet, infrared, and radio waves, is invisible to the masses but is very much physically present. In biology, we call an expanded color vision tetrachromacy. It is proof that senses can evolve toward a higher bandwidth. The unification: the invisible world is physics. What religion calls the spiritual world is simply located on frequencies that we normally do not see, hear, or feel. Light. Angels, or ETs, could be beings that reflect in a spectrum beyond our reach. To one, they are spirit. To another, they are simply invisible biology. Sound. Low frequencies, infrasound, travel through walls in the earth. Sensitivity to this makes vibrations tangible that others miss. Gravity. Where Einstein speaks of the curvature of space-time, quantum mechanics searches for the graviton, the gravity particle. Perceiving these particles in empty space means seeing the fundamental architecture of the universe. The synthesis, the biological upgrade. My personal observation of this expanded spectrum is not an abnormality, but an evolutionary harbinger. It proves that the boundary between the physical and the spiritual is merely a matter of perceptual frequency. The Creator designed a universe with infinite layers, creation. Evolution is the process by which our organism develops the drivers to make those layers perceivable. Reality is not divided, only our ability to see it is. Strongest argument for unification. The fine-tuning of the universe, the fact that natural laws are set exactly right for life, points to an intelligent design. A creator who makes trillions of planets and billions of galaxies does not do so for an empty hall. The enormous scale of the cosmos suggests that the universe is full. The scientist calls this a statistical probability. The believer calls it the fullness of creation. Both are right. 6. Celestial biology. Angels and ETs as H.E.A.R.T.S. The greatest barrier to unity is the artificial separation between humans, extraterrestrial visitors, ETs, and angels. In the reality of CreaVolution, these latter two are identical. An angel is simply an evolutionary success story from another planet. The point: extraterrestrial is biblical. At its core, the conclusion is inevitable. Angels do not come from Earth. By definition, they are extraterrestrial. Ancient texts describe observations of advanced technology using the vocabulary of that time. Phenomena such as Jacob's ladder or Ezekiel's wheel were not abstract dreams, but observations of biological entities and interstellar vehicles. The radiant appearances in the Bible and the smokeless fire in the Quran correspond exactly to beings operating on a higher frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum. The unification, H.E.A.R.T.S. I call these beings H.E.A.R.T.S, helpers from extraterrestrial advanced realms that support. These beings fall under the Beath hypothesis. They survive their own destructive phase through moral synchronization. Because they can travel interstellarly, they are by definition peaceful. Aggressive species destroy themselves before they reach the stars. Their bodies and ships are not magic, but high-level biology and physics. They are not here to judge, but to support us in our transition to the cosmos. The unmasking, the myth of the demon. Polarization is maintained by the fear of the demonic. In reality, this is a human projection. The H.E.A.R.T.S do not know external demons. They see only psychological processes on the path to maturity. On Earth, the devil is a human invention to explain our own shadow side. Satan is a metaphorical name for moral failure in human character, not a physical entity walking around. Our oppressors fear disclosure because their tool of power, fear of evil, evaporates once we see that we ourselves are the source of our problems. The synthesis, the universal blueprint. Science speaks of the Fermi paradox. Where is everyone? Religion speaks of the host of heaven. Both are talking about the many civilizations in an immense universe. The Kardashev scale. Civilizations that are millions of years older than ours use technology that appears divine to us. The image. The fact that ETs often have human-like characteristics, eyes, limbs, intelligence, confirms the universal source code. God created life in His image via a blueprint that employs the same basic forms throughout the cosmos. Strongest argument for unification. Angels and ETs are our fellow creatures in an unimaginably vast universe. When we stop labeling them as supernatural or dangerous, we see the truth. They are the older and wiser brothers in the process of CreaVolution. They prove that evolution ultimately leads to a spiritual and moral unity with the source. 7. The politics of polarization. Divide and rule. The struggle between the creationist and the evolutionist is no accident. It is a relic from a time when we thought humans were the center of the universe. While we argued over the details of our origin, the powers that be kept the curtains closed. In this chapter, we unmask polarization as a smokescreen. The point: polarization as a tool of power. Polarization is a proven instrument for controlling the masses. By making people fight over the question of how we got here, chance versus God, we fail to look at what is actually happening now. As long as the believer distrusts the scientist, and the scientist mocks the believer, humanity remains blind to the larger, cosmic reality. This intellectual vacuum is used by the powers that be, the military-industrial complex and political institutions, to keep information about UAPs and non-human intelligence, NHI, hidden. The unification, the falsity of the choice. CreaVolution shows that the choice between a soulless universe or blind obedience is a false one. If the angels of old are the ETs of today, the boundary between religion and biology vanishes. If creation is an intelligent, self-learning algorithm, evolution, the boundary between science and spirituality vanishes. Both camps are forced to revise their worldview by the presence of an external, higher intelligence. The necessity of unity for contact. We cannot understand the complex reality of interstellar contact using 19th century dogmas. A scientist who refuses to consider a higher intelligence cannot place the moral superiority of the H.E.A.R.T.S. A believer who denies the biological reality of evolution will perceive the diversity of life in the cosmos as a threat rather than the crown of creation. Unification is therefore not a luxury, but a survival strategy for the transition to a cosmic civilization. The role of the seers. People with expanded perception are living proof that reality is layered. We are not an aberration of evolution, but proof of the creative potential of the human organism. We see the threads with which the Creator wove the web of evolution. Our oppressors do not fear disclosure because of the technology, but because their tool of power, fear of the unknown, evaporates once we reclaim our true place in the cosmos. Strongest argument for unification. The fish ape and the watch have become linguistic traps that keep us ignorant. We must face the facts. Creation is the source, evolution is the method, and consciousness is the goal. The polarization ends here, not because we agree on every detail, but because we finally dare to look in the same direction, up toward the stars and inward toward the source code of our existence. 8. Conclusion. The cosmic transition. We stand at a crossroads in human history. The battle between religion and science has been fought, not because one side won, but because the dividing line between them has dissolved into a larger reality. CreaVolution. The point. The end of the excuse. After walking through the facts, there is no longer an intellectual excuse to remain stuck in polarization. We have seen that the days of creation are the eons of geology. We have seen that DNA is the universal programming language of a self-steering algorithm. We have seen that the dust of the earth is the chemical stardust from which we evolved. The conclusion is simple. Creation is the intention. Evolution is the method. The Creator does not build watches. He programs worlds. The unification. Two sides of the same coin. The apparent contradiction was merely a matter of perspective. Science describes the engine room, the mutations, the selection, and the billions of years. Religion describes the architect, the meaning, the moral law, and the origin. Just as a poem consists of both ink and paper, the matter, and an emotion, the intention, the universe is both a biological process and a divine design. The call, preparing for contact. The unification of our worldview is not an abstract exercise. It is a necessary preparation for what is coming. The presence of the H.E.A.R.T.S, angels/ETs, forces us to cease our tribal quarrels. A humanity divided over its own origin is not ready for a place in an interstellar community. A unified worldview, in which we honor the laws of nature as the language of the Creator, makes us immune to the manipulation of the powers that be. The finale of CreaVolution. The conflict ends once we stop asking who is right and start seeing what is true. We are not the product of blind chance, nor are we the product of a static magic spell. We are the result of a magnificent, billion-year-old process of growth, adaptation, and awakening consciousness. The most powerful bridge sentence. To summarize everything in a single thought, evolution describes how life unfolds, while creation describes why the universe allows life to exist at all. Closing word. The curtains are opening. The transition to a cosmic civilization has begun. The polarization stops here, at the foot of the stars, where we finally realize we were always one. Welcome to the era of CreaVolution. Hans J.C. Bakker, March 2026, the Netherlands.